Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Johnny. Welcome, everybody. Boy, are we excited to be on today. I am Denise Harlow, the CEO of the National Community Action Partnership, and this is Diane Lee, our Communications Director. And again, we have a lot of people on today's web meeting, so we're excited. As Johnny mentioned, you are on mute. I hope you do put questions in the chat, or the question and answer, or the Q&A chat window. Is that what we're using, the chat window? Put your questions there so we can make sure to pause and respond to them as we go through. And I know we're going to be pausing periodically as we go through the web meeting. So we are thrilled to kick off today's communications conversation.
That is a good way to put it. Communications conversation, because that's what we're doing.
That is exact, yeah. And eventually, the next one of these, we hope to be able to unmute and really have some dialogue. But we have so many folks on today's call. And we're going to be walking through a number of components today. We have a strategic communications plan that we want to talk with you about. We want to talk about the idea of a task force that some of you may engage in more in-depth conversations with us. We want to touch a little bit about a survey that we're going to send to everybody that will have your ability to give us some feedback, and a number of other things here today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, and she and I will be probably talking more as we go through the next hour or so, but we're really happy that you're with us, and we hope this begins a path of communication with everyone in the network about how we can better share the message of community action to no longer be the best-kept secret right, in the country, and to really help local agencies, state associations, and national partners to engage in this conversation.
And that's what this is all about. This is about working closely with you, being in sync with you, and making sure that we all are on the same page and we're communicating the best way that we can to make ourselves more visible as a network. So we'll get started talking about our agenda. She mentioned a few things. The most important thing today we're going to be talking about is working closely together. The second thing, the walkthrough on our strategic plan. This is a short version, so you won't have a huge, long version, which might take a long time. We will be talking about some of the network messaging that was in the strategic plan, just a one-pager, actually, not the, I think we have like 5 or 6 pages that is in the official full-blown strategic plan, but we won't be talking about that. We're just going to be sharing what you need to know today. Also, we want to talk about the task force, because this is something at CapCon that in Philadelphia where a lot of people came up to me and said, hey, we think this would be a good idea. Are you guys interested in doing this? Definitely. So we'll talk about that. We will also talk about our social media goals. This is an area where we really need to ramp it up as a network so that we can help create visibility and awareness for community action and what we do. And that we're also talking about the Community Action Month Toolkit, the CAM Toolkit. That's done. We're so excited about that. We're only mentioning a little bit about it today because we have some webinars coming up where we will be discussing it a little further. Also, the Survey Monkey, which she suggested, this is a 23-question survey. We'll get to that in a moment. Then we're going to remind you about the overall strategic plan for the partnership for the next 5 years, right? Will be driving us forward and moving us onward. Then finally we'll be talking about advocacy days, so that that is coming up tomorrow, right?
Our first one is tomorrow, March 7th and March 28th are our big online advocacy days. We'll get something out hopefully later today a little bit on that again. But hashtag CSBG and hashtag a wise investment.
Yes, we need to promote that and get it going viral. So moving right along to our next slide, we're going to be talking first about the communication strategic plan, the short version as I mentioned. And I think I sent you should have gotten an email with this, so you can download it if you'd like. Oh, we're both
we're both very excited about this plan.
Great minds think alike, that's for sure. So our overall goals that they mapped out for us and our objectives was 1, increase our value as a network, become experts on poverty for external audiences so that they realize and they come to us for information on what's happening in this realm and in this space. Their next suggestion was to boost our awareness of the network as a robust, on-the-ground force nationwide, because this really is one of the biggest strengths that we have, and that's what they found to be the case when they were doing their research. Our fourth goal and objective through the strategic plan was to strengthen the network's capacity to communicate who we are. So this is actually kind of like the first step in what we hope to do in making ourselves more visible and strengthening that capacity to communicate. And then the fifth one is build the partnership's internal capacity to communicate effectively. So in order to do that, that's going to require, which we'll talk about a little more in depth a little bit down the road in this presentation, but things like, you know, the toolkits and the webinars and all those materials we produce, we need to really ramp that up. And that's one thing that they found in the strategic plan. So in our next slide, they looked at, they looked at our key audiences. These are what they consider a priority for us. Those are our national think tanks, advocacy groups, membership organizations, poverty leaders, state associations, community action agencies, of course, non-engaged members. We need to really get them involved. And collaborating with partners like NCAP and NASCAP and CAPLAW. These are what they consider our key audiences and our priorities. So with that in mind,
I'm just going to add something here a little quick. I thought was an aha moment for us in our strategic communications conversations is that the partnership does a relatively good job of communicating within our network and with our members. And you'll see here our plan, they're really trying to help us do a better job of talking to external audiences. What we hear from the network is what you want us to be doing more of. So making sure those national think tanks know who community action is and the impact community action has across the country. So I hope when you see these priorities, you're saying, wow, that does seem to resonate with what we've been perhaps critical of the partnership in the past or the concerns we've had about the community action not being highly visible. So that's kind of where Springboard was coming from, I think, with some of these recommended external audiences.
Right, and they took a look at the communications landscape for us, and they did a SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that really face not only the partnership, but that also face the network. And what they found, these were the good points. They found that we really do have access to a broad, reaching network, and that it's invaluable, the technical expertise that we disseminate across all avenues. So they thought that that was really highly beneficial for what we do. The partnership also, they said, was very productive in its capacity to be able to produce materials that were really punching above our belt and above our weight on this. So they wanted us to prioritize, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then they said engaged members find and appreciate our technical support. So we're doing an excellent job, they said, in that internal communication that she was talking about. So, but the problem comes in on the next slide where, they found some challenges that we have to overcome. And that, as Denise said, was we don't talk with external audiences enough. They're not hearing from us. They don't know who we are. And that is really detrimental to the whole network. So that's going to be a lot of focus, is it not, Denise, on where we're going in the future?
Exactly. And I see a question came in through the chat window about making sure we minimize our use of too many acronyms, certainly. So certainly SWOT, looking at our strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, that sort of piece. It was really kind of an environmental scan of the network's perception on our communication pieces. But right, this need to tailor our verbiage and our conversation with external audiences. It used to be back in the day you'd print something up and it had to have a shelf life of a year plus. Nowadays, things have a very short shelf life. So how are we nimble enough through the partnership and the entire network to make sure we're tailoring our messages to those right external audiences and even tailoring within the network to our own folks, the right messages they want to hear.
And that brings up those two points right there, the jargon. Get rid of the jargon that we have a tendency. And everybody does that.
Everybody does.
But, I agree with them that is one area where we really can improve upon. So moving to our next slide, this is the strategies and tactics. The new messaging, they did come up with about 5 pages of new messaging for us. I have it here somewhere, but
we went back and forth with them probably 4 or 5 times, and it's still not going to make everybody happy. It doesn't make everybody here happy, but I think what we find is there are elements in these messages that we're going to be able to use.
Yes, and so today we're going to be sharing a little bit later one of the pieces that is geared toward the network itself on the messaging that they advise us to take and run with and use. So we'll be sharing that in a moment. But really they think that we should be promoting our expertise to national audiences. So when we go to panels and we have discussions on poverty, this is where we really need to shine. So we need to have materials with us, brochures, talking points, things that we, and have these messages down that we can share out to these external audiences. They also felt that we needed to retool our website, our newsletters, and tailor them, as you kind of suggested earlier.
Right. As communication folks, I know today's webinar has a lot of communication experts on the call, and we hope through our task force that we'll be talking about, a number of you will help us do this, right? So we can't, inside the Beltway, do all of these things that are going to resonate with all external audiences. Right. So we're definitely going to need your help, community action, on a lot of these pieces. But it is, what do we need to do to develop pieces that will resonate with those external audiences, think tanks, politicians, funders, the general public, about the role and impact of community action in that poverty space?
Right. Also, one thing they suggested, which was really important, was sharing your story, sharing about our members and what they're doing. They feel that is one of a key area where if we improve upon this, our visibility will just rise exponentially. So we're hoping that we can get some stories from our network, whether it's visual stories, whether it's written articles, you name it, we need to be getting those, so we need to be in the loop.
And we know so many of you have these great stories, and I know that you do a great job sharing them. So just even one of the practical things they've recommended to us is that once or twice a week we are sharing routinely one of our agency's customer success stories.
So we're actually starting that this week. So tomorrow you will see in our, it's today. It's Tuesday. These are my days. Today you will be seeing in our e-newsletter the first one, the first success story that we're going to be sharing about our network. And we're going to be doing that as well on social media. So that's a real big key change for us, I think.
And knowing many of you, you might be saying, well, duh, shouldn't you have been doing that already, Denise? We're like, yeah, and we have been, right? We do it periodically. We share things in our e-news. But I think it's a matter of intentionality. So we really are planning them out in advance. We're being very thoughtful and intentional now about sharing these success stories, doing those on multiple platforms, and being very proactive. So keep doing what you're doing. Send us all that. Send us your good stories that you already do. And just want to make sure that we're not totally clueless on this, but it is more of a matter of intentionality for us.
Definitely, and this is all about the power of the network, communicating the power of the network. And one of the things which we'll be talking about a little bit is how they have us with a project management calendar where we will have these things, you were talking about intentionality, placed into this calendar so we know when it's going out, when it's, when we need to have stuff done and and all of that is with intention. So we kind of hit upon this, streamlining the newsletters, launching a Get Acquainted tour for our CEO. And I'll let Denise talk about this because this is, initially I think we're kind of doing it informally, correct?
Well, it's going to kind of be a balance, right? So, and I'm encouraging folks to put questions in the chat window. We'll pause here in a few moments to see if there are questions that are coming in. But you can't see it off camera, but we have a picture over on a flip chart right now. One of the pieces that Springboard has recommended is that we do this kind of spotlight report that we could theoretically do on an annual or yearly basis. Many of you do this already for your local agencies. And then take that resource and go on a Get Acquainted tour with these national partners. Now, have we over the years worked with Urban Institute? Sure. Have we worked with the Alliance for Strong Families and Children? Sure. Have we worked with a number of other national organizations? Definitely. But what can we do to reintroduce ourselves to these organizations, talk differently about community action using some of this new wording, new messaging that our communication experts have given us to help elevate the visibility of community action. So we're going to be being, again, intentionality, I think, is the word of the day. What can we do to make sure we have something to bring to them, have a sit down, and let's reopen some of those dialogues that may have gone dormant or a little stale.
Yeah, because sometimes, even though you know you should be doing this, it gets lost in the forest when you're doing so many other things. So, so this is really keying us in on what are priorities for us and for the network. So she talked about the cohesive talking points, which are going to be disseminated to the network so that you can also talk about your local impact in your stories and do a better job as far as being able to share what we do and to increase the awareness for us.
I know many of you were at our branding summit in Chicago last spring, right? April, I think, of 2017. And one of the outcomes, one of the recommendations that strongly came out of that was creating ambassador toolkits, which would include talking points. So that's where that last bullet kind of comes from, is that the desire to take these talking points and frame them up. What do board members, what are some consistent talking points that board members can use? Leadership staff, volunteers, customers of community action agencies that help frame us all up in a consistent, not mandated way. We're nowhere near looking to mandate anything, but that was really a call from the network about these key talking points.
Right, and it's powerful, positive messages that really might, hopefully have an impact on what we're trying to do. So,
go ahead.
Okay. Just a few more priorities, and then I'll tell you about that calendar again that I kind of briefly touched upon. So one of the things that they talked about is that we do need to improve on our collective identity as a network. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Because I've got CAP logo written there.
And there's no requirement. Don't feel that you have to. We're not asking for people to change names or logos, but.
Right. This is something that they suggest that on your website, if you don't have the partnership logo, that perhaps you place it somewhere on your website, preferably on the front page, where people will know you're part of the network. And that so you keep your same logo if it's different than ours, but you also have ours so that everybody sees that we're one and that we're connected. So this is a big thing for them. They think this is important.
And I think we've heard this from many of you. I think we heard it at the Branding Summit. We hear it when we're out in the field. Why don't all CAP agencies at least put the logo on their website? Well, we would agree, and our consultants agree. I think right now it's that matter of intentionality. What can we do to promote that within the network, make the ask, and give people the easy tools to do it? So we have a branding kind of link on our website where it has logos and things like that. So we're going to be, again, intentional about sending out a request to the network to have this logo added, like NeighborWorks, if you're a NeighborWorks member, right, that logo, if you're a United Way member. And we go to a number of sites where you see United Way and you see NeighborWorks, but you don't see community action. And we're asking if folks can potentially do that. Now, if agencies want help redoing your own logo to blend in, we're happy to help that, and we're always encouraged when agencies are using some of the national branding resources in a lot of different ways. And I see somebody came through the chat that it is up on our website, so thank you very much, OACA. Good job, Ohio.
So another thing that they suggested they felt was really important is that we have regular communications training for our network on communications. So that would be like today. So our webinars, our toolkits, our conferences, that this is a high priority for the agency to make sure that we are talking to each other and we're communicating out and we're learning from each other, sharing that peer-to-peer knowledge, sharing our expertise, and vice versa.
Right, and I think, and we've talked about this in terms of really doing an intentional track at our conference. We did that last year a bit. MLTC, our winter conference, we had some pieces, but I think this coming August, we want a full concrete track dedicated to increasing the capacity of local agencies' communication pieces. We hope to do webinars and trainings on social media, on editorials and op-eds and branding pieces. What can we do to provide you the TNTA that we do around two-generational approaches to poverty, but do it for communications to make sure you have free and accessible resources that you can put into practice every day.
So in a little bit, we're going to be talking about the survey, and we have a lot of those questions on there because we want to hear from you about what you think is important with regard to training and what you think you need to be learning from the partnership or vice versa, because you can help us as well. Many of you are experts in communications in various different areas, and we may need your help as well. They also felt we needed to, as a network, not just the partnership, better track our analytics. So whether it's social media, our website, all of that, we need to really pay attention to measure and then take those measurements and analyze how can we be better? How can we communicate more effectively? And then finally, the suggestion, which I kind of briefly touched on, was the editorial calendar. This is really, on the next slide I'll show you an example of it. This one is from May, the one we're about to show you. Here it is. So this was actually taken from Hootsuite, and we use it for our social media, but we also are using this for the project management. For the entire year, we are mapping out what the communications department here at the partnership has on its plate, what we're going to be doing on a grand scale with the larger pieces like the annual conference, but also what we're going to be doing with the smaller pieces. So you see on here we have this is the Community Action Month, so we're going to go live on that Tuesday. We're going to have web updates that day that we have to do every day. We'll be doing our e-news that day. So this is a project management. You can even adopt this kind of thing for yourself to help us improve and make sure we're intentional on our communication.
Okay, let's pause here and walk through to see what questions have come in through the chat window. So if we could, when you're talking about visiting your national leaders, that's exactly what the marketing firm we work with suggested to us this year, making visits to the movers and shakers in your community. So what we're thinking of is that we will be, and if I was at a local agency or a state association, we know many local agencies have an annual report and state associations all have statewide annual reports. What can you do to use that production cycle to give you a reason to reach out to local movers and shakers? Hey, I'd like to come talk to you about our organization. No ask is on the table. There's not an ask for money. It's a get to know you. Maybe it's over coffee. Maybe it's over lunch. Just wanting to share the great work that our organization is doing. That's similar to what they were recommending to us, is that we go sit and chat with a number of national advocacy organizations, whether it's CLASP or again, I think Urban Institute keeps coming to mind, another Center for American Progress. Here's our Community Action Annual Report. Here's our Spotlight Report. Have you thought about community action recently? Do you know the breadth and depth and innovation of our network? Did you know we served 15 million people last year through 1,000 agencies, and that we're not perhaps what you think we are? We are a vibrant network, and let's show you all the really great stuff going on across this network. It's amazing. So it's using the tools in that kind of scenario.
And that relationship building is something that many, many businesses do, and it's invaluable. I can't stress that enough. But you can do that with the media, for example, in your community. A lot of people used to do that, where we would take our brochure and we would talk to them and introduce ourselves. Sometimes we brought cookies. You know, and it worked.
Good.
Yeah, it was good. It worked. But that relationship building is huge when you're trying to getting good with those external audiences.
Yep. Let's go to the next question on the question. What about reciprocal links? If we put the partnerships logo on our website, will you put our logo on your website? We are working on collecting agency logos. We'll be creating a bank of all the agency logos. Now on our site we do have Find a Community Action Agency, where people can search by county, by city, by state, and find local agencies. The challenge is to put 1,000 agencies' logos up on our website. But if there are things that you think that we could do a better job of helping to share the story about what's going on the local level, that would be great. But whatever we can do to help build a reciprocal relationship, we certainly want to do. Another comment has come in. I know another presentation done by Springboard, they suggested that we do an About Community Action piece. Can we add that to agencies' websites? Yes, that is part of the recommendation as well, and we're going to be framing up kind of not a too generic piece, but a piece that if you wanted to put a link on your website to say, learn more about community action, click here. And many of you have the promise, you have our mission, you have a bit of a description, but if you don't, maybe what we're able to send to you might have some value and some use.
So on that note, we can move to the next slide, because we're kind of talking about messaging when we talk about us. And this here, I know you can't read it, but I did send you a copy, so you have it in your email, and Johnny can send you the one-pager. This was actually taken out of the 5 pages that they gave us of messages, and this one is strictly for the network. And what they do is they break it down into 3 quadrants, that you can see the need, how we address that need, and then the vision. So if we go to the next slide.
That table's really small, so we have it in another slide here for you.
Yeah, you can actually take some time if you'd like to read the need. I'm going to read just the bottom part of it for you, which stood out to me. It says everyone should be able to take care of their families and have an equal opportunity at success. So go ahead and take some time, a minute or two, to read this, think about it, and give us your thoughts in the chat window on just the need alone and what they're talking about.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to circle back to some of the questions that have come in. Not sure we need more training on social media. How about testing an app building? Do we want members ready to use posts for social media? Definitely. So perhaps less individual training and more how to use the information, I'm guessing. I'm looking at Jovita, who's also off camera at the moment, about that. We can cycle back to that if we're not thinking of your question correctly.
Well, what's good about this question is that we have the survey coming up in a little bit, which we have an area where we ask some open-ended questions about how you feel we can assist the network, how we can help you to learn the things that you want to learn, because we kind of are in a vacuum, so it's hard to know what everybody thinks is important. I think social media is huge, but maybe Johnny doesn't. So we would love to get that feedback in this survey, which we're about to talk about in just a second.
Okay, so what you have up on your screen, now this is not necessarily you have to use these words verbatim. This is our consultant gave us some feedback in terms of this might be some language that we might want to consider using. So you'll begin to see some of this. So I just saw one comment has come in about the term equal opportunity. What is that? Does that resonate with some folks differently than other language might? And I would agree. I think, and we've gone back and forth with the consultant several times, tweaking this and tweaking that because it didn't quite go together. Equity and equality are not the same thing. So some of this we have to kind of use in ways that are meaningful for our own organizations. So take verbatim what you want to take verbatim, and then you don't have to take the other stuff verbatim. But I hear you on some of that concern about language. So the idea here is in our messaging, we frame up the need, and so this is the national language, right? So this is the need, and I think our next slide is how we address the need, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, do you want to talk a little bit about this language then?
So addressing the need, and we have, there are actually 2 slides for this, but this first one says the nation's 1,000 plus community action agencies are a robust state and local force reaching children and families in 99% of America's counties with life-changing services. And that to me is huge. I don't know what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts about that. But that says a lot to me. And then these agencies will connect individuals and families to approaches that help them succeed and will promote community-wide solutions to seemingly stubborn challenges. So if you read this message, it really hones in, I think, on positivity. There's nothing negative that I see in it, but I'm curious what your thoughts are, and would love to hear about it in the chat window.
Things for me in this that resonate, I've been using the word robust more often. I know I've dialogued with some folks in the network who aren't always a fan of robust, but I think it does express the breadth and depth of our network. The life-changing services, for me, services I know isn't quite where we want to start with. We want to talk about outcomes, but it's, again, the life-changing services that create pathways to prosperity. Again, much more proactive language, and this is grounded in research on what resonates with the lay public, right? Those of us in community action, we're not afraid of the word poverty. We'll talk poverty, but here this is much more about pathways to prosperity, opportunity, bigger, more asset-based language, honestly.
Yeah, there's a really big push nationally by many organizations that are finding that research shows talking about poverty, unfortunately, can have a negative connotation, and it's hurting many agencies. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But
and we won't stop using the word poverty.
Yeah. But agencies are trying to talk, I think, more about opportunities and the voice for opportunity and hope. Anything on the positive spectrum, we still fight poverty, but.
Good. Now let's go to the next slide so you can see the other 2 bullets underneath this particular talking point.
So basically here, they're talking about how community action agencies share evidence on what works to promote greater economic opportunity for children and families being a family of one even. We've talked about that you don't just have to be an individual is a family. Community action agencies are locally run. They receive a range of public and private resources for their work. So if you take a second and just read over these 2 bullet points, if you have any thoughts, go ahead and put them in the chat window so we can discuss if you think that this is addressing the need accurately.
And so between these 4 bullets, we have connecting individuals and families to approaches that help them succeed, so individuals and families. Promote community-wide solutions, so family, community. And here we have community action agencies share expertise, right? So we have family, agency, and community. And that 4th bullet tries to resonate hopefully with what David Bradley wants us definitely to communicate about CSBG. It's about that locally run, local decision-making power that community action brings to the table.
All right, we'll move on to the next, or do we have any chat?
We've had a few things come in. So the addressing of needs seems to address family, but not really seeing how this touches the community level work. Perhaps these 2 concepts need to sometimes get separated, and more community action agencies and community is not being addressed. Seems odd since we are a community action agency, so perhaps we need to do a better job of fleshing out the community level verbiage a bit. Another comment, maybe financial stability instead of prosperity. Is prosperity realistic? I agree with you there, and I always talk about self-sustainability. None of us are really self-sustainable, really, in the scheme of things. But stability, we are oftentimes in the stability business, so I think that's interesting. We can definitely be highlighting some of those pieces. Local people, somebody here likes the local people addressing local issues. They think that's a good piece. There was something else? Somebody thought that the first paragraph was very powerful in language. Someone is, we might be overthinking, but how can the national theory of change and our new 3 national goals be tied in? It feels like this stands in isolation. Trust me on that, we hear you, and we gave them our theory of change, and different pieces will be used for different audiences. So definitely hear you, and how do we figure out how do we tie and weave those pieces together will be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that, when I was reading over the theory of change and learning this job, it really resonated with me, and I loved what it told me about community action. And I think that going forward, that is definitely something that we can incorporate somehow into the network messaging as we push it out there, and as we all kind of come together and agree on pieces of it that we think we want to see go forward. So definitely the theory of change is high priority for me as well, and I'm glad to see that other people really believe in that and want to see that brought forward. Now, moving on to the next slide, this is the 4th one, and that is the vision. And this is pretty powerful, I think, and it's very concrete, and especially the messages down below. Those are like bullet points that you can use in social media and in your, when you have reports that you're putting out, and you have to think and these are just 4 examples. You can have many examples, but these are solid examples. America's community action agencies connect millions of children and families to greater opportunity, transforming their lives and making our communities and our nation stronger. That to me is a very powerful statement.
And it's that first statement, I think if you see these next few bullets, those will change every year, right? So we may have different numbers that come out of the CSBG annual report that we want to talk about or highlight. And at the local level, I think you can definitely take that top paragraph and talk about what happens in Columbus or what happens in Denver or what happens in Detroit, and talk about specifically about the difference that your local agency made. So yeah, I think that it connects, and it's millions of children and families. Now, do we know we do more than that? Certainly. Again, this takes the professional view about what translates well to these external audiences.
Right. We can go ahead if any comments. I have to say, you have great eyesight, by the way.
Right, the comments are right behind the camera, and they're really small, so we're doing our best to try to read the comments here. What about everyone should be able to take care of families and have economic opportunities to succeed? I love that quote, and again, I think there are a lot of elements here that taking bits and pieces that work for you. I remember at the Branding Summit, we tried doing an elevator speech exercise, and it was incredibly hard for us to come up with one elevator speech And that's kind of what the consultants were trying to get at, is some level of consistent communication. And I'm not sure how possible that is, but hopefully you see some frames that you'll see in a number of our communications that we hope that you may implement at the local level. This slide really shows the action part of community action agencies, outputs versus outcomes, gives a sense that change is possible. I like that. Do you talk about updating the understanding of what poverty means? I think the negativity brings up an older picture of poverty and not today's reality, of that anyone that can be one paycheck away from hardship. And another piece that came as a recommendation, in addition to that kind of annual report, is the recommendation that we put out more regular pieces about poverty today. And now that's a staff capacity, honestly. And I think if we get this task force put together, we'll be able to use network resources for that. We're not the experts because we live inside the Beltway. You guys are the experts in the field. So how do we make sure we're consistently putting out the right framing? What is poverty today? And you're right, everyone is, you know, so many people today are one paycheck away, one illness away, one disability away.
And that, yeah, and moving on to the next slide, she brought up the task force because this is about working together to make this happen. We have a small staff, so doing all of this is, we're really going to have to rely on each other. And I know you have the same needs that we do, in that your budget might be stretched, or you don't have the personal capacity to do this. So this task force, we hope, we come together many times throughout the year, at the annual convention, possibly at MLTC as well. We basically get on conference calls together and share what we can about trying to get some of this information out there. The next thing on working together is these webinars and providing toolkits for you. So our survey asks what you would like us to help you with. What webinars and teachings and trainings would you like us to formulate, so that we can make all of this happen and we can teach and learn from each other. Then also they wanted to know which sessions do you feel are important at our conferences and our conventions? Because as I said earlier, I'm still in the realm that social media is hugely important. However, there are some people who they don't think it's important at all. So we really want to gauge what you have to say and work together on this. And that brings up social media in general on this next slide. Our goals are really to increase our visibility through social media, but how do we do that in an ever-changing landscape? Because social media is constantly changing. They've just redone their algorithms, which makes it harder for us to, you have to pay to play. If you don't want to advertise and give them money, you don't necessarily get seen as much as you used to. So we have to be crafty in the way that we work together. And this brings us to the point of, are you following us, and are we following you? There's so many agencies out there, it's really hard to keep track, but we want to make sure that definitely the people on the webinar who are most interested in what we're trying to do, that we're engaging with you, and that we're sharing what you put out there and vice versa, and that we're retweeting and reposting as much as possible. And we also would like to know what platforms you're now on. Some of us are on Instagram, some of us are on Facebook and Twitter, some are on Google+. This is all going to be in the survey, and we'll ask you about it, but we're definitely curious to see where you're headed and what you're interested in. What content are you promoting, and how can we work together better to help you promote that? So we hope that you take our communication survey, which is on our next slide.
Well, and on social media, I can remember probably 3, 4 years, maybe 5 years ago now, during Community Action Month, we had Twitter 101. Then I think the next year we had Twitter 201, and then I think we went back to Twitter 101. So people have come a long way. The number of caps that are on Twitter or on Facebook is really significant. That people are following us on Instagram is really cool. Retweeting us is great. Retweeting and tagging us at Community CA Partnership is always great to do. At our advocacy days, we're asking people to use hashtag CSBG, hashtag AWISE-investment. We have our Community Action Month toolkit we're going to be previewing. There's hashtags for that, so whatever you can do to tag us is great. This is the survey link. and we'll be sending this out to you as well. It's a quick survey, but give us your Twitter handle so we make sure we're following you so we can retweet you. Make sure we have your Facebook so we can make sure that we're paying attention to all of that.
Even at the conferences, when we hold our conferences, if we have your handles, and let's say you're giving a presentation, all of that is highly beneficial to get it out there. We have to try to do everything we can. So this is due by Friday, March 23rd. We have sent a link in our email, or you can send it in the chat window right now for you if you'd like, and you can take your time and go for it, but make sure you have your social media addresses available so that when you take it, you can write it down there.
Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
So while we move to this, though, people have asked, what is our Twitter handle? It's @CA Partnership is our Twitter handle, and we're the National Community Action Partnership National Office is our Facebook, and that's a lot of that's in the survey, so you can link right to it. And we've also have used the Twitter handle Nat Training Center. I think we're merging that into our National Community Action Partnership Twitter feed, though. So that'll be kind of depleting over the next few weeks.
And you can always find those on our e-newses at the bottom. We have links to our social media, so if you want to follow us. But if you want to put it in the survey what yours are so that we can follow you, we would appreciate that. And then I will follow up and make sure that we're following you. And then that way we can help each other. We're now on Instagram. Instagram is actually, I don't know how many people out there are on Instagram, but for the younger audiences, which I know that's an area where we need to target for the future, this might be an area you want to consider taking part in. It's kind of a fun platform. It's a very picture-oriented, very video-oriented, and it's pretty simple to use, but it's definitely on the rise where some others, like Facebook, are actually going down. So something to consider, but we are on Instagram, so look for us. All right, on this next slide, the CAM Toolkit, Community Action Month Toolkit. It is finished, and here it is. So it's 49 pages long. I don't know, I just could not eke out 50. But it's done. A few tweaks. We're going to be putting it on the website here pretty shortly. I'm thinking within this week and next week, and by Friday of next week, it should be completely on there, both as a PDF for download and then also as individual pieces for you so that you can just grab and get what you want. We're going to also be holding webinars on this. In going through the toolkit itself, the week of April the 3rd, we have not gotten a date down yet. We're in the process. It looks like Tuesday or Thursday at this point of that 3rd week, so we will let you know through e-news and through email. As I said, you can download it via our website once it's put on there. And some new additions this year, which we would love to talk about, is the calendar, which you saw earlier.
Isn't that pretty?
Yes, it's a beautiful calendar. It has a lot of fun stuff on it. It also has some serious things on it as well. We have posts that are connected to it. So we've crafted up a series of posts on certain days that you can just grab if you want and share on social media. We have memes that you can also grab on certain days and share as well. We have a meme creator for the first and the last day. So you can insert on those, you can insert your mission on the first day, and on the last day you can thank your folks out there in your community. So lots of good stuff on the toolkit. We'll go to the next slide, which kind of shows you an example of the meme. I took a serious one because a lot of people think memes are only funny, but they don't have to be. Memes can definitely be serious. It's about making things go viral or trying to make things go viral. And this is one for Memorial Day that we crafted up that you'll be able to use on Memorial Day. Grab and go kind of a thing. So that pretty much wraps it up for the toolkit. Do we have anybody asking any questions or interested to know anything about the CAM toolkit?
Well, we're really excited to get this out earlier than we have in years past, so thank you, Diane. You did a great job getting this ready. I know it was a lot of stuff happening really quickly. So this used to come out earlier in the year, but it used to be kind of a copy-paste deal. Diane's really put a lot of thought and effort to making this a unique new product for the network in a lot of different ways. So you'll be getting this. This will be coming out. We're going to be doing a webinar, I think, from our office, just kind of walking through the core components. You are the communications group across this country who will be using this, most likely. I hope that you will share it with your colleagues across your state network with other CAP agencies. And then we'll be doing, hopefully, a national webinar with all of the national partners, because as we have in years past, NCAP, and David Bradley is the Executive Director of NCAP. He's had his staff be engaged in this. We've had NASCAP with Janae Bieland and her team, Eric, and others over there be engaged with us, and then the partnership staff. We always love having CAP law, but they're more the TA side, so the communication stuff really is important, I know, across all the national partners.
You know, one thing I forgot to mention, it was on the bullet, and I apologize, we have a video production section. So I know a lot of people are producing videos nowadays, and we included video editing tips, video shooting tips, some great video links for you to check out. This is an area that I love. It's kind of my baby, so I feel
she's the video goddess.
I don't know about that, but I'm trying. Okay. Well, moving right along in our next slide, we want to do some reminders before we close. A few reminders, right? So the partnership is going through a strategic planning broad process right now. So the survey is still open, I think, for another couple of days. It will be closing on the 7th, which is tomorrow. If there are other comments or questions about that, you can email me directly. That's fine. Someone also asked earlier, where can I send my logo? You can send that to me or Diane. Diane's email, I know, is in here as well, dlee, D-L-E-E, at communityactionpartnership.com. You can always email me, and I can forward it to Diane as well. So we encourage you to complete that survey. The second piece I want to remind you, especially as communications folks, let's go to the next slide, is our Advocacy Day. Days, I should say, and Diane mentioned this earlier, right? There are 3 ways to get involved. We have a CSBG support statement. We have a CSBG board resolution that you can also add weatherization and LIHEAP to. And then we have 2 virtual advocacy days tomorrow and then Wednesday the 28th, probably before and then after NCAP's conference. And David Bradley, I know he was supportive of these events, and our verbiage is consistent with the CSBG talking points that he has, his ask for $750 million for CSBG, and also his weatherization and LIHEAP asks. So I hope that you see a level of consistency there. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see at the bottom of our website, and you heard earlier Diane say our consultants want us to revamp our website. Gave me a little bit of heartburn when our consultant said that. But for right now, the bottom of our website has latest news, and that's usually where you're going to be able to find stuff. And so that's why when we release the CAM Toolkit in a couple of days, one of these boxes will say Community Action Month Toolkit. You can click there to get to the next slide, and you'll see our advocacy kind of website or web page right now that has the CSBG support statement, the toolkit, all that good stuff that you're going to need for the advocacy days. Next slide. This one for toolkit. Real quickly, that's on there for you. Just download it, and it has your hashtags for you that you can use on social media. So a wise investment, CSBG. This will give you tweets. Anything you need has been put together in this toolkit so that you can help us spread the word about community action in this kind of dire time when we really need the support. And that's right there for you on that last page, and he's sending it in the chat room, I think, as we talk.
And in the questions that came back, when is the board resolution due? We would love to have it by the end of March if that's possible, or early to mid-April. We know board meeting schedules. There's no cutoff date, so even if your board doesn't meet till late April or early May, we'll definitely take it then as well. We're building kind of a store of those board resolutions and asking agencies to sign on to that CSBG statement as soon as possible. That doesn't necessarily need board action, so we hope that agencies can sign on to that directly themselves. Love the idea of the toolkit and additions for the virtual advocacy days. We are stronger together. Would agree. David's success on the Hill, lobbying and advocating for CSBG weatherization, LIHEAP, is because of the work that you certainly do in the field, so thank you for that. What are some other tools we've recommended to folks in the chat? Hootsuite is a great resource to schedule your tweets and your posts and kind of in one spot. How to do memes, Canva. I'm going to get a technical assistance visit to my office from our team member who knows Canva really well. I'm excited to learn how to use that, so be ready. Adobe Spark, cool videos, easy to use. And I know many of you, I see videos all the time on my phone, whether it's on Twitter, on Facebook, you guys are just knocking it out of the park. So what can we do to give you more tools, more themes that we can, as a network, amplify all of our voices together?
Yeah, and when you take the survey, a lot of the questions ask you if you have any suggestions on tools and resources and things like that. It's open-ended, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for things that, if you have expertise in something that you think is a good technology to use, we would love to hear about it. So anything you feel that you can share with us in that survey regarding tools would be great. I'm trying to think if there's anything we missed.
Let's go to the next slide. So you have Diane's email address as well as Johnny's. Let's go to one more slide past that one. And we've mentioned the survey. We talked a little bit about the task force. So we really are looking for a few dedicated souls who have a knowledge and appreciation of communication strategies. We need your help.
Yeah, we would like to build, too, a database. So a database of stories and posts and things we can go to in times of need when we are rushing around and we need to get it out now. It'd be nice to have all that at our fingertips. So the task force could possibly help us with this. They could help us formulate a lot of the messages that we want to get out, some of the brochures, just the things that we want to see to make our network more visible. We feel the task force can help with this.
So if you're willing to volunteer for that, in the survey it will ask you whether or not you're interested. If we get a huge response, then we might narrow the field a little bit and ask people, we'll follow up with folks to talk about why you want to serve, make sure we're clear on expectations. My guess is it'll meet probably 4 or 5 times between now and the end of the year to really help make sure that we're getting our messages out in a consistent way, that we are developing tools and resources that are really practical at the local agency level. We don't want to get stuck in the DC mindset. That doesn't help any of us.
Yeah, especially like if we were talking tools. So some of the tools we use might be too costly. So if you have ideas on like Adobe Spark, which is $9 a month, you can actually brand with a $9 a month, technology. It's awesome. So these things we would like to come together with the task force and talk about and share. There's absolutely no way, I wish I could have all the information in my head, but it just doesn't happen. So hopefully, we can be absorbed from you a lot of the things, too, that we need to be able to help you. And with that,
well, I hope that today gave you an introduction to our strategic communications plan, some of our messages. We'll definitely get you out the slides, and I think you've got some stuff already, and you've seen links in the chat window. We hope that will respond to the survey. We hope you'll participate in Advocacy Day. I hope that it has given you a flavor about what we hope these regular webinars that we hope to host with this broader group will contain. I think for future ones, we're going to try to hopefully have it set up where we can unmute you, but today was just so much information and so many people, which is great. But we definitely want to create a dialogue with you, and I hope that you hear that we are trying to be intentional about our communications work, that this is no longer kind of a back burner, this is a front burner priority for us.
Yeah, and we're getting some messages, and I can actually see this one. It says, I am familiar with Hootsuite. Thank you. Yeah, I love Hootsuite too, because when I have a long day and I need to get messages to all my social media, I can just go to Hootsuite and boom, it's out there and it's free. So I love it, and I agree. Yeah. But thank you. We appreciate your joining us today. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you take part in the task force or take part in our survey, and because we could really use your guidance and help too.
Well, with that, we will leave you today. Please email us, complete the survey, and thank you so much for being with us today. And again, I hope you hear intentionality and passion from our communications team on this work, and we are so thankful for the work you do every day. And thank you so much for joining us on today's call, and we look forward to seeing you on future calls and in Denver in August and our whole communications track at that event. So
yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting.
So thank you, everybody. We'll be in touch. Take care. Bye-bye.